provide you with the lowest per GB rates, night or day. SLT 4G, driving you ever forward.
Making headlines on First at 9. Machinations in Geneva. Reluctance to believe what really happened.
There were legal opinions and there were legal opinions. They are clearly not in sync.
Sri Lankan army is one of a kind.
We were the only force in the world who fed the enemy, fought the enemy and sent medicine to treat the enemy when they got injured. Isn't that funny?
What India did. Revelations of a plan to rescue Prabhakaran by the Indian Navy. Free falls effect. Vehicle prices to rise amid the rupee's record slump. Give and go. Former President Mahinda Rajapaksa calls on the government to step down if it cannot curb the economic downturn. Trouble at a parade. Gunmen opened fire on an Iranian military parade, killing at least 24. A very good evening to all our viewers who are watching First at 9 on another Derana 24/7 Sri Lanka's news channel. I'm Katharina Chang. Now moving on to our top story tonight. The World Patriotic Lankan Forum today responded to allegations levelled at Sri Lanka of deliberately depriving Tamil people of humanitarian assistance. The allegation relates to members of the Tamil community who were caught up in the last stages of the armed conflict with the terror cell, the LTTE. Addressing a forum organised on the sidelines of the United Nations Human Rights Council session, the World Patriotic Lankan Forum charged that the UN had overlooked reports and views of key individuals when deciding to point the finger at Sri Lanka.
The World Patriotic Lankan Forum today participated in a forum organised parallel to the United Nations Human Rights Council session. The forum presented a declaration which consists of 4 points in a bid to respond to all LTTE sympathisers.
Clearly mentioned there's no war crime in Sri Lanka. Why are you continuously demanding for another inquiry?
The positions of all those particular groups that you have mentioned have been completely the opposite of the positions of the people consulted, and they're equally eminent people, by the United Nations in establishing its report. There were legal opinions and there were legal opinions. They are clearly not in sync. They are not in agreement, which is why, rather than declaring that one side or the other has the absolute truth, we need to have another investigation to establish facts and to establish the official linkages.
Don't you think it's funny, it's fishy, something fishy, because this Ban Ki-moon was the secretary to the UN. He came just after 3 days of the conclusion of the war. But when the LGTA was recruiting 3,000 child soldiers and using as cannon fodder, he never came here. When the LGT was using 295,000 people as a human shield, he never came here. But he came to Sri Lanka just after 3 days to teach us about accountability. So don't you think that there's something fishy about it?
The retired Rear Admiral also responded to claims of the government deliberately depriving the Tamil people of humanitarian assistance during the latter stage of the 30-year conflict.
In order to provide assistance to the civilians, the government had established the CCHA, Consultative Committee on Humanitarian Assistance. And this committee comprised of government officials, including the Secretary of Defense, the secretaries of all relevant ministries, and non-government representatives, including Ambassador to the USA, the head of delegation of the European Commission, the ICRC officials, the World Food Programme, the country representative of the UNICEF, the World Health Organization, etc. This means the international community had access to the highest government officials responsible for providing humanitarian assistance to the conflict zone. But the OISA panel never consulted those people or the reports of CCHA before making their conclusion in this regard. The UN humanitarian coordinator who was in Sri Lanka at the same time was Mr. Neil Boone. We have minutes of CCHA meeting stating that Mr. Boone has applauded the good work done through the government agent structures and noted that they should be given a gold medal for the work done. Mr. Amin Awad, the representative of the UNHCR, has expressed the view that Sri Lanka was a role model for the entire world. Mrs. Imelda Sukumar was the district secretary to Mullatiu, the Jaffna area. She flatly denied the charges that provided records of food dispatch and stated that there was always a surplus available in reserve. They solved and And also they said about the ruses adopted by LTT in siphoning the food stocks from the multi-cooperative society. We supplied the necessary items knowing that most of it went to the hands of LTT, but as we have proved beyond a reasonable doubt, we were the only force in the world who fed the enemy, fought the enemy, and sent medicine to treat the enemy when they got injured. Isn't that funny?
Meanwhile, the head of the UN body that leads on sustainability and green issues, Erik Solheim, who was once a peace negotiator between the Sri Lankan government and the LTTE, is criticised for extensive and expensive air travel. A draft internal audit obtained by The Guardian says that Erik Solheim's actions risk the reputation of the UN environment. The report says he incurred costs of $488,518 while travelling for 529 out of 668 days. Solheim was once confident that he would influence Prabhakaran more had they spent more time together.
Senior Bharatiya Janata Party leader in India and Rajya Sabha member Subramaniam Swamy charges that former Congress President Sonia Gandhi, former Union Home Minister P. Chidambaram and former LTTE leader Vellupillai Prabhakaran were hand in glove with each other. In a message posted on Twitter, Swamy says former Indian Minister Chidambaram had sent a message to Prabhakaran during the 2009 battle to await Indian Navy to come to rescue him.
In a message posted on his Twitter account, senior Bharatiya Janata Party leader Subramanian Swamy stated that former Union Home Minister P. Chidambaram had sent a message to the leader of the terror group, the LTTE Vellupillai Prabhakaran, during the 2009 battle to await Indian Navy to come to rescue him. He states, quote, "Navy did come, but it was Sri Lankan Navy. Prabhakaran walked out of the jungle onto the beach thinking it was the Indian Navy, hence he was killed," unquote. He also said that former Indian Minister Chidambaram had sent the message to Prabhakaran at the command of TDK, which is the abbreviation usually used by Swamy to describe Sonia Gandhi during the final days of the May 2009 war. The tweet further says the Indian Navy ship, which was expected to reach the theatre of war, did not leave Indian shores because of stiff opposition from highest authorities. He said, quote, "Prabhakaran could not be informed by the Congress leadership about the change of plan," unquote. Subramanian Swamy's tweet, meanwhile, prompted a media report in India. It quotes former President Mahinda Rajapaksa as saying that India and Sri Lanka had a mechanism in 2009 against the LTTE called the Troika, where 3 officials from both sides were able to discuss any issue even in the middle of the night. The media report says experts are of the view that the Troika had played a major role in scuttling the move to save Prabhakaran. In a recent interview whilst in India, former President Mahinda Rajapaksa said that the government of India and Sri Lanka had worked in tandem in the 2009 war in the island nation. The report says it is in stark contrast to the claims by the DMK, then an important ally of the UPA government led by Manmohan Singh. It says Karunanidhi, the then Chief Minister of Tamil Nadu, had said that the centre had told him the operation by the Sri Lankan government was only to nab LTT Chief Prabhakaran and India had no role in the military operations. The report adds that LTTE had used innocent Tamils as human shields to save their Chief Prabhakaran and his henchmen from the Sri Lankan army.
With the Sri Lanka rupee seemingly in free fall against the US dollar, Vehicle Importers Associations herald a price hike for imported vehicles. The value of the rupee dropped to a new record low of 170 against the dollar yesterday, and Vehicle Importers Association say that prices will go up by at least 300,000 rupees owing to the depreciation of the currency. For the first time in the country's history, the Sri Lankan rupee hit a record low for an 8th straight session yesterday, falling to an all-time low of 169 rupees per dollar before closing at 170 rupees. The rupee has weakened 4.5% so far this month, after a 1.2% drop last month, and has declined 9.9% so far this year. As a measure to curb the depreciation of the rupee, experts point out that it will be pivotal to increase exports and curb imports to address the widening trade deficit. According to the CBSL, the June trade deficit was the lowest recorded this year, but the growth in import expenditure had outpaced the increase in export earnings. Export earnings grew 3.8% to $1.24 billion in June this year compared to 2017, while import expenditure increased 18.1% to $1.81 billion. It is in this backdrop that the CBSL said with the upward tax revision on small vehicle imports are expected to decelerate in the coming months. Once again, on the 19th of this month, issuing a communique, the CBSL announced that the Monetary Board of the CBSL imposed a 100% margin deposit requirement against letters of credit opened with commercial banks for the import of vehicles as a result of global financial market volatility and generalized pressure on currencies of emerging market economies. However, as the rupee continued to plunge, it is no surprise that the price of imported vehicles are seeing an increase. Associations importing vehicles expressed views on the depreciation of the rupee.
If we take an unregistered imported vehicle valued at 3 million rupees, we can expect prices to increase by 250,000 rupees. In this case, imported vehicles can expect a price hike of 8%. We held discussions and decided that we will sell our current stock of vehicles at the prevailing rates. When taking into consideration the current market, in the future we are expecting the rupee to depreciate further against the dollar, which will reach up to 200 rupees. This means vehicles selling at 3 million rupees will increase by 600,000 rupees.
Few days back, the central bank brought in a ruling to have 100% margin for all the LCs established for motor vehicles. That was brought in purely to control the imports of motor vehicles. Therefore, the central bank is expecting to have a control on the US dollar. At the same time, with this present increase on the US dollar, the cost of a motor vehicle, which is around 7.5 million, would go up by about 200,000 to 300,000 rupees. That is purely with this rupee devaluation. And I think we also, as importers, should support the steps taken by the central bank to overcome this problem. There will be an operational cost for us because all this time we had been opening LCs on nil margin, and now we got to invest 100% margin on the LCs for all the motor vehicles.
President Maithripala Sirisena is due to leave for New York this evening to address the 73rd session of the United Nations General Assembly on Tuesday. This will be his 4th consecutive annual address to the world body. Meanwhile, the President handed over letters of appointment to the new electoral organisers appointed by the Sri Lanka Freedom Party at the President's official residence last evening.
The SLFP's Central Committee recently removed 7 electoral organisers for failing to establish electoral committees. Accordingly, parliamentarians Susil Premajayantha, Anura Priyadarshanayapa, WDJ Senaviratna, TB Ekanayaka and Chandima Virakodi are among those who have been removed from their SLFP electoral organiser posts. As a result, new electoral organisers were appointed with their letters of appointment being presented by President Maithripala Sirisena last evening. MP Dayasiri Jayasekara was appointed the Kurunegala District Leader and Co-Chairman of District Coordinating Committee as well as Co-Chairman of Pannala Region Coordinating Committee. Minister Faiza Mustafa meanwhile was appointed the SLFP electoral organiser for Central Colombo, with State Minister Piyasena Gamage appointed Co-Chairman of the Galle District Coordinating Committee. In the meantime, the 2019 Cricket World Cup trophy, which was exhibited around the country in the past few days, was ceremoniously brought to the residence of President Maithripala Sirisena last evening. The trophy was presented to the President by former Sri Lanka cricket captain Arjuna Ranatunga, who led the Sri Lankan team to victory at the 1996 World Cup.
Former President Mahinda Rajapaksa calls on the government to hand over the country's governance to the joint opposition if it cannot curb the economic and currency slide. The former president made or touched on the topic while addressing a special media briefing held at his official residence at Vijayarama, accompanied by members of the joint opposition today.
During 2007 and 2013, there was an economic depression in the world, but we saved the country from that. We did that by being vigilant on the depreciation of the rupee. We convened the central bank, the treasury and other banks to instruct them that the rupee should not depreciate further than a certain point. What has happened today is that necessary leadership is lacking. If the government says the depreciation of the rupee can't be controlled and that it will increase, it will happen for sure. The government has failed to control the economy and it is now time to accept their inability and hand it over to us. They should take measures to curb the situation than accusing us for everything.
අපි බලය ආපු දවසට අපි ඒක ක්‍රියාත්මක කරනවා.
දැන් පහුගිය කාලේ ඔතුමා මේ පහුගිය සතියේ ඉන්දියාවේ සංචාරකයෙක් වෙනවානේ. එතකොට දැන් ඉදිරියේදී ඔබතුමාලගේ ආණ්ඩුවක් පිහිටවද්දී ආර්ථික වශයෙන් ඔවුන්ගේ සහයෝගය අපේක්ෂා කරාද?
නෑ අපි එහෙම
We didn't discuss anything as such. Investors will not come if the economy is not stable, especially when there is a clash between the President and the Prime Minister and it is evident.
එතෙන්දී ඇති වෙන්නේ අස්ථාවරයක් අත තුල.
අනිල් වික්‍රමසිංහ අග්‍රාමාත්‍යතුමා කියනවා අපි දැන් ණය ගෙවලා ඉවරයි අපි දැන් ඉදිරියට සංවාදනය කරනවා.
බලන්න මෙන්න මේ මහ බැංකු වාර්තාව.
The central bank report states the increase of debt in 2016 and 2017 owing to the depreciation of the rupee to be 696.9 billion rupees. That's not new debt. It's what the country has to pay due to the depreciation of the rupee.
රුපියල් වලින් වැඩි වෙච්ච ණය ප්‍රමාණය.
හැබැයි මේ ආණ්ඩුව නම් කියන්නේ 2014 වැඩිය තාම බඩු මිල අඩුයි කියලා.
කොහෙද තියෙන්නේ?
Our prices have risen lower now. What about bus fares?
ආණ්ඩුවට වඩා බස් ගාස්තු ලාභද?
Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe says that $443 million have been flown out of the country owing to the rapid depreciation of the rupee. The Premier made the remark while addressing a ceremony held in Nathandia today.
$443 million have flown out from our share markets, but nothing has come in. What should be done? As a temporary measure, Argentina, India, Indonesia, Mexico and Turkey have increased the interest rates of their central banks. It is problematic in our case since if we increase interest rates of our central bank, interest rates for businessmen will rise. We should think as to whether we need to cross that juncture at present. At a time the rupee has depreciated by 9%, importers are asking for more dollars. Exporters are hesitant to bring dollars into the country. They don't release it until they get a profit.
Former Defence Secretary Gotabaya Rajapaksa stresses the need for a strong leadership in order to safeguard the country's rule of law. Addressing a forum held in Polonnaruwa today, the former Defence Secretary also questioned the recent conduct of the Inspector General of Police.
Another phase of a forum organised by the organisation ELIA got underway in Polonnaruwa today. The event was held under the auspices of former Defence Secretary Gotabaya Rajapaksa. You may have witnessed the behaviour of the IGP in the past few days. He has become a joke. We do not expect an Inspector General of Police of the country to dance at festivals and sing at gatherings. When we are living in an era where the rule of law is deteriorating, these should not be seen as his responsibility. In the recent past, you may have also heard of a certain activity which involved a senior police officer. Such incidents should not occur. In the future, we will appoint a leader like Mahinda Rajapaksa who is able to take firm decisions within the government. Following the forum, the former Defence Secretary received an overwhelming support from the Tamil and Muslim communities residing in the area.
A fire broke out in 2 train compartments at the Dematogoda railway yard today. The fire brigade said that several fire trucks and firefighters were dispatched to the location to help douse the flames. The Department of Railways said that the fire had broken out in 2 train compartments sent to the yard for maintenance and repairs. The cause of the fire is yet to be ascertained while police are investigating the incident. And we will join you with some business news after this short commercial break.
You are watching Sri Lanka's award-winning news channel, Derana 24/7.
Department of Census and Statistics say that headline inflation decreased to 2.5% last month from 3.4% in July this year on year-on-year basis. The slowdown was mainly attributed to monthly decline in food prices in August, When the monthly change is considered, the NCPI decreased from 126.6 index points in July this year to 125.4 index points in August, largely due to decline in prices of food items in the food category. Meanwhile, price increases were observed in the subcategories in the non-food category, particularly that of petrol, diesel and taxi in the transport subcategory. Furthermore, the NCPI core inflation, which reflects the underlying inflation in the economy, increased to 2.7% in August from 2.3% in July this year on year-on-year basis. A report compiled by the World Bank finds that gradual changes in weather patterns in Sri Lanka will lead to a downturn in living standards by 5%, while GDP levels could decrease by 7.5% by 2050. Speaking at an event recently, lead economist for World Bank in the South Asian region, Muthukumara Mani added that the most impact will be felt in the northern and northwestern regions. These remarks came in the backdrop when the government is pushing to promote further investment opportunities in the north and the east.
One area which we don't know much about is this gradual changes in temperature, gradual changes in the monsoonal rainfall patterns that's been happening over the years. Even a 1 degree increase in average temperature could make a huge difference in terms of what crop a farmer should plant. Propagation of certain diseases in terms of health. Or if you're a construction worker working in a city, your productivity could be hugely impacted. And we wanted to see if there is a similar relationship between temperature and living standards. And interestingly, we found out that almost for all the South Asian countries we studied, the countries are already beyond their tipping points. For example, in Sri Lanka, we are actually on the downward sloping part of this inverted U shape, which suggests that any further increase in temperature, other things remaining the same, will only lead to a declining living standard. In Sri Lanka, the living standards will go down by about 5%, and even in the scenario where countries actually follow through in climate, in the worst case scenario, it will be a decline of about 7% by 2050. And if you translate the decline in terms of GDP, we find that by 2050, under the worst case scenario, GDP will decline by about 7.7%. Northern and northwestern provinces will be most impacted from climate change and followed by the other region. We find that Jaffna, Puttalam, Mannar, they are emerging as top or most impacted districts with an expected declining living standards almost 10% or more. The general policies that the governments follow for development in terms of providing more educational opportunities, increasing access to electricity, opening up markets, creating jobs. I think these are also very important policies to consider in terms of improving climate resilience.
China has cancelled upcoming trade talks with the United States and will not send Vice Premier Liu He to Washington next week. The Wall Street Journal says a mid-level delegation was due to travel to Washington ahead of Liu's visit, but the trip has now been abandoned. Earlier this week, China added $60 billion of US products to its import tariff list as it retaliated against US duties on $200 billion of Chinese goods set to go into effect from the 24th. Meanwhile, the US has imposed sanctions on the Chinese military over its purchasing of Russian military jets and surface-to-air missiles. It says such purchases contravene US sanctions on Moscow introduced over Russian actions in Ukraine and alleged interference in US politics. China recently bought 10 Russian Sukhoi Su-35 fighter jets and S-400 missiles. Beijing has not joined in the sanctions imposed on Moscow by the US and its Western allies since 2014. Gunmen opened fire on an Iranian military parade in the southwestern city of Avaz, killing at least 25 people, including civilians, and injuring more than 50 people. Reports say the attackers shot from a park near the parade and were wearing military uniforms. Iran's foreign minister said terrorists backed by a foreign regime were behind the attack.
At least 24 people are killed and over 50 were left injured when unknown gunmen opened fire during a military parade in the southwestern Iranian city of Avaz today. State television said the attack targeted a stand where officials were gathered to watch the annual event, marking the start of the country's 1980 to 1988 war with Iraq. Reports say the attackers shot from a park near the parade and were wearing military uniforms. Iran's foreign minister said Iran holds regional terror sponsors and their US masters accountable for the attack. State media and officials have blamed Sunni militants or Arab nationalists. Reports say 8 members of Iran's Revolutionary Guard and a journalist are among those killed. Media reports say that women and children are also among the victims. 2 of the gunmen were killed by security forces while the other 2 were arrested in the battle, which lasted around 10 minutes.
You are watching Sri Lanka's premier news channel, Derana 24/7.
Time for you to get the latest from the world of entertainment with our segment 70 Seconds of Entertainment.
Starting off with the Emmys, an unscripted live drama unfolded on stage of the Emmy Awards last Monday when Glenn Weiss, who had just received an Emmy, proposed to his girlfriend Jan Swenson, seated in the audience.
Because I want to call you my wife.
Swenson then made her way to the stage where Weiss placed his mother's wedding ring on her finger. Singer Rihanna had said she couldn't be more proud after being given a new ambassadorial role by the government of Barbados. The artist, whose full name is Robin Rihanna Fenty, was named Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary for her home country on Thursday. The role involves promoting education, tourism and investment. Brie Larson has hit back at Marvel fans who claim she needs to extend her acting range by all of things, smiling more frequently. After the first trailer for Captain Marvel was released this week, fans started bemoaning what it showed of Brie Larson's performance in the title role, complaining that her acting seemed stiff and wooden. That sentiment led one Twitter user to literally and creepily Photoshop a smile onto Larson's face in stills from different scenes, claiming they had fixed her.
Well, do tune in to our weekly entertainment program Showbiz Tonight, hosted by Mahesh Johnny, which will not be airing tomorrow night as usual, out first at 9. Instead, the Sri Lankan of the Year Awards ceremony that organizes the Best of Sri Lanka will air 9:35 tomorrow night. Showbiz Tonight will return next week. However, on Monday night at 6:55, Showbiz Tonight will host a special program on the 70th annual Primetime Emmy Awards. Make sure you join us for that.
You are watching Sri Lanka's #1 news channel, Derana 24/7.
Now on to our weather now. Sheila Fernando is at the Derana Weather Centre with your forecast first evening edition.
A very good evening to our viewers and welcome to Forecast First. Starting off with your temperatures for tomorrow that vary between 20 and 34 degrees Celsius with a highest of 34 expected in Mullaitivu. Well, when looking at the map, a low pressure zone will develop in the western province and will gradually spread throughout the island. Well, moving on to your rain forecast for tomorrow, most parts of the upper region of the island, including Jaffna, Manna, Vaunia and Anuradhapura, will experience showers with thunder activity also expected. It's no difference in the lower region of the island, as most parts will experience thunder showers. That's all from the Weather Centre tonight. Up next is your city by city forecast.
And that is it on our Derana First at 9 for tonight. But before we leave you, we'd like to take you today. It's a hill of sunflowers in Osaka city of Japan. We hope you enjoy these visuals and have a pleasant evening.
Bringing you the news and information 24 hours a day. This is Sri Lanka's premier news channel, Derana 24/7.